All right, we are back in the office down here at Gillette Stadium, back with Doug Kyed of the Boston Herald. We talked to, get this, Armon Watts and Sione Takitaki today. No disrespect, but I have to understand that you back home at Twitter were hoping for something a little bit more exciting. Well, you got what you wanted. Tom Brady teasing just before we come on here today. I would not be opposed to a late season return for a playoff team in need of a quarterback. So we're going to hit on that, and then we're going to hit on all the same quarterbacks we've been talking about for months. Drake Maye, J.J. McCarthy, and Jayden Daniels, because you've watched every single snap for two out of those three. I've done the same. We've both watched at least most of, for me, Jayden Daniels, and for you, Drake Maye, and go on what we think the Patriots will do, what they should do, have a final official call 2 weeks from the draft at number 3. But let's start with Brady, because you sat right there here in the Herald office at Gillette Stadium, and I just heard Tom's voice with this hesitation. I'm like, oh no, here it comes. Yeah, I would play again. No, stop. It's been a full year talking about buying the Raiders, which would, for now, prohibit him from playing against. But what was your silent reaction?
Like, why? Why are we doing this? Like, Brady is, like, he's never really done this before, kind of like kick that door back open. I know that, I don't know. I'm at the point, obviously, now where we're not, like, hanging on every single one of Tom Brady's words. So I forgot exactly what he said about some of the rumors around the 49ers in the past, but this feels like it's opening up a whole new can of worms where I think you laid it out in your piece where, like, he'd have to adjust his post-playing lifestyle and some of the partnerships and ownerships that he would have. Certainly he cannot be a part owner of the Raiders, which seems like it's probably going to be made official relatively soon here. But I don't know. I mean, like, he also, this was with like a hair cutting influencer, like a influencing barber. I don't know. There's so many people out there with like millions of followers on.
Well, and we were
Instagram
also just complaining about our backs, where we don't know the guy he's talking to who's got a face tattoo. I'm obviously been bald for a long time, but we've never felt been older in the last hour. But
yeah,
the shout out was the Deep Cut podcast.
Right.
And then got an email from their PR people actually just 5 minutes ago to say, hey, in case you want more. No, thank you. But it is newsworthy, Tom speaking again. Like, we were all doing this, you much longer than I was.
Yeah.
Anything he said was news. And he did it again.
And he brought up the Patriots as like a team. Because I think I feel like a jerk for like not knowing this guy's name or whatever. But as an aside, there's so many famous people out there now who like 99% of people don't know about. I wonder how these people like handle their day-to-day lives of like knowing they're famous in this like very small subset of the internet, but no one else knowing who they are.
Over 30.
Right.
Like, I think there's the line.
So I'm one of those people who doesn't know but he was like mentioning the Raiders and I think like the 49ers, something. And then Brady tossed out there Patriots. So that certainly makes this a little bit more relevant here than it might be. But although I don't expect the Patriots to be a team in 2024 that would be, on the cusp of a Super Bowl who just lost their quarterback or anything like that.
Right. All right. Let's put a bow on this and just be very clear about what this was. Again, he's appearing on this Deep Cut podcast, getting his hair cut. It's a podcast like this one, also on YouTube. And, the host pitches to him, hey, if you got a call, it's late in the season. God forbid someone goes down and you're going to the playoffs. Would you pick up? Brady says, I wouldn't be opposed to it. The host had mentioned the 49ers. He mentions Patriots and the Raiders, and then goes on to say, I'll always be in shape. I'll always be able to throw around the ball. I don't know if they'll allow me, and that's the key part, right? Like, Tom Brady's known interest and efforts to buy 10% of the Raiders within this larger group has been known for a full year now. But the deal has not been done because the owners initially rejected it in September, even though he agreed with Mark Davis, and they're allowed to do that because when you purchase minority ownership in the league, you need approval from at least 24 of the 32 owners. That didn't happen. It could have happened at the owners' meetings last month. It did not. Once again, Roger Goodell says there's progress, and that's where things are right now. But he would not be able to play under the current bylaws, and this is expected to happen. He's also going to be the lead analyst, which to be honest, I had forgotten his deal at Fox, a sweetheart 10-year, $375 million deal. So the reason we bring this up is because it will be on TV. It will be on places that you're reading. It's on the BostonHerald.com right now, and it's obviously freaking Tom Brady. But there is a 99.99% chance he never plays again. And it was funny digging up an old Pro Football Talk post about this that said at the bottom, a source told us that Brady loves to kind of keep the door open just to stir the news up. And that was 4 months after his second retirement when this first came up, as well as his ownership bid.
I mean, if he's interested in playing, he should just play. Like, I don't know. Yeah, the Fox thing is the major. Obviously, the ownership thing, he can't do that. With Fox, at least he could continue that contract while playing or whatever, but he can't actually do that job. If I'm Fox, I'm wondering, like, is this guy actually ever going to work for us? But I don't know. For me, I'm like, hey, if you want to play for the Patriots, like, there's a wide opening here. Bill Belichick is gone now. Like, just step right in. They could have hired Josh McDaniels, but no, I don't think Tom Brady's ever going to play again. But this at least opens the door up.
Yeah, and I will say this, as much as I kind of poo-poo it from like, there's just going to be this mushroom cloud of content, but the content is really just what a mushroom cloud consists of. Right. A lot of hot air, not a lot of substance. If he did come back to New England, wide open with open arms, by far the most interesting player in this team, the storylines, all of that. But yet he's going to be inducted in the Hall of Fame in June here, 6/12/24, as you've heard from Robert Kraft. There are hurdles with ownership. They would also have to change the rules to allow him to play and own. Let's move on. Okay. So the original conception of this podcast, again, to talk about what the Patriots should do at 3, what we think they will do at 3, and then to bust some myths, because again, watching every single pass and run, you get to know these quarterbacks better than I think most of the people talking in this space. And that's a commitment we want to make. This is a big deal for the Patriots picking at 3. And if we're going to be talking about it, obviously we want 2 feet on the ground, firmly knowing what we're talking about. But first, the latest buzz or lack thereof that you've heard about where they stand with these quarterbacks and where you think they'll make a pick here in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I still expect them to take a quarterback at number 3 overall. I think it would be crazy not to. I mean, Elliott Wolf's job depends on what the Patriots do in the draft. Robert Kraft essentially said that at the NFL annual meeting. So you want to come out of this draft with a really good quarterback. You don't want to kick that can further down the road. We might have talked about it before, but with the whole Tony Pauline report that Elliott Wolf was, leaning towards J.J. McCarthy or whatever it was. He said that he'd heard that from other NFL GMs. I'm not sure if I'm repeating myself here, but just that, like, if that's the case, if Elliott Wolf is leaning towards J.J. McCarthy, people on staff don't know that. They think that Elliott Wolf is keeping his cards close to the vest or whatever, that he's going out of his way to really not tell people, even on staff, which way he's leaning on the quarterbacks, probably because he doesn't want that information to get out. So I think he would be smart enough to not be going around talking to a lot of other executives. Then again, he's been around the league for a long time. He knows a lot of different people. J.J. McCarthy could wind up being the pick. I just think that he's probably smarter than that to let other people know that if he's being careful within the walls of Gillette Stadium.
Right, because again, if you're not telling people with whom you work, this is what I think, this is what I feel, why would anyone outside the building whom you're directly competing with, and information is not just power right now, they're weapons, like your sources, the inside scoops that you have about what's going to happen next, because then you can plot out what you want to do with the rest of the draft. Like, it's highly unlikely anyone outside the building knows, and you can say that for certain. People inside the building who work for Elliott Wolf are going, I don't know what he wants. Right. And if you're pushing back on this, let's say from the outside, playing devil's advocate, okay, this guy who is talking about collaboration and we're going to decide together, we're all going to share our opinions, is suddenly withholding that. Why would he do that? The answer to me, and maybe you disagree, is he saw Bill have such an influence over a front office that Bill raised at his own knee. Matt Groh, Nick Caserio, Dave Ziegler to a degree, and everyone underneath, these scouts come up, and they looked up to him in a way that was hard to disagree. And that was the issue that Elliott Wolf had, is there was just this group thing that went along with Bill. So by withholding his opinion as now the top dog in this front office, he's allowing for more dissension and people to speak freely because they're not trying to align their opinions with his or disappoint the boss. He just wants to facilitate the conversation, even though if we know at the end, he will be the one making and leading the draft pick.
Yeah, and I'm sure that there's collaboration with the highest, front office execs in the building or head coach, whoever it might be. But like, this isn't being touted around the building. Like, he's not letting his opinion fly right now within the building. I think that that's the most important thing. But also, like what you said, I think that, it is good to let other people have their opinion first. And then when it comes down to it, he'll give his and they'll decide on someone. But right now, they don't have, they're not picking number 1 overall. So they can't, their consensus doesn't matter because there's 2 other teams picking ahead of them and people can trade in front of them as well. So they might want J.J. McCarthy, but they might actually not even get that opportunity if he's not there. So yeah, there's a lot of steps involved until they actually get to make that pick.
Okay, so I spent all of last episode staring into this screen, and for most of it talking about my love for Drake Maye. All in. I'm on the record. That's it. I like Jayden Daniels a lot. I like J.J. McCarthy, but I love Drake Maye. So let's hit him really quickly as we go down those 3 quarterbacks. Because, again, you and I are in alignment. They're going to take a quarterback at 3. That's our expectation. We'll see what happens. This is silly season. All the necessary qualifiers. But Drake Maye really quickly, because when we talk about myth busting, and this is the things that you learn when you look at every single throw and every single run, to me, protected the ball better than his reputation indicates. And I highlighted this in a clip we posted on X, is to say his turnover worthy play percentage was 1.8% last year. And that would have tied for the best in the NFL among starting quarterbacks. Obviously, he plays in college. But I totally understand what you watch that film and his compulsion to play superhero and put on the cape. And sometimes he did make absolutely horrific Josh Allen kind of turnovers, young Josh Allen. But overall, this is a guy who you saw do that more often because he's attempting so many more passes and also passes playing from behind, which Jayden Daniels and J.J. McCarthy did a lot less of at LSU and Michigan, respectively.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a good myth to bust. That's probably the top one to bust on Drake Maye. For me, I didn't watch Drake Maye quite as closely as Jayden Daniels and J.J. McCarthy, at least up to this point, since those were the guys that I was writing up. You were writing up Drake Maye. But, I mean, for me, the ball just comes out of his hand differently than it does for Jayden Daniels and J.J. McCarthy. And, like, that's his best trait in comparison to those other guys. And, I mean, his turnover-worthy play rate, I believe, is lower, like significantly lower even than J.J. McCarthy. Only had 4 interceptions
by
last season.
50%.
Right.
So you get half. 16 interceptions over 2 years. You look at the opener against Carolina, it just goes off of the receiver's hands and straight to the Gamecocks there for in that season opener last season. So not all interceptions are made equal, and that's why you highlight certain stats like turnover-worthy play percentage, which is not gospel. It's not even objective, but it's close enough to objective where you trust it more than just, another pick, another fumble. Well, whose fault are all these turnovers?
And, I mean, with Drake Maye, his traits, once again, are like what you look at for him. You don't necessarily look at the stats. I think that he was hurt more by a supporting cast, much more than Jayden Daniels, who has 2 first-round picks at wide receiver, and J.J. McCarthy, who had a fantastic offensive line. Like, he's hurt the most by his supporting cast. So typically you wouldn't look at stats being in Drake Maye's favor. But as part of this study that we did on quarterbacks, I did some essentially statistical or analytical research on it. And it's a complicated process, but essentially I combined accuracy rate, average depth of target, big time throw percentage, turnover worthy play percentage, run grade, and EPA per play, all into one metric. Just like average them all, standardize them, whatever. I was not expecting Drake Maye to rank relatively high in this.
No.
And he was second behind Jayden Daniels. So even when you're looking at the statistics, Drake Maye ranks pretty high, still below Jayden Daniels, but still number 2. J.J. McCarthy was number 3. Somewhat surprisingly, Caleb Williams was, I think, number 6, which I personally have not done that much research on Caleb Williams just because I expect him to be the number 1 overall pick. I don't expect him to be available there for the Patriots. But that was something I was like, that's a little bit odd. But no, Drake Maye ranking that high also tells you that his metrics were pretty good last season as well, despite it being a down year statistically for him and for him not having that supporting cast.
Right. And again, this is not to pile on the love fest that was largely my last episode when it came to Drake Maye. The footwork is a mess that affects his accuracy, obviously, which when you put in a vacuum in certain instances is lesser than Jayden Daniels and lesser than J.J. McCarthy. And particularly when he gets off of his first read, that comes up more often. Now, he will create plays, I think create better than Jayden Daniels, extend plays, something from nothing. And given the situation, you understand why. Okay, so I know we talk a lot about the draft in this podcast. It's a football podcast. It's a Patriots podcast. What else are we going to do until April 25th? Well, let me tell you, soon enough, we are going to turn our attention to the Celtics and Bruins because they're getting in the playoff action. And so can you with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app, where right now you can win up to 100 times your money with as few as 4 correct picks with basketball, hockey, and other sports on Prize Picks. And I'll tell you, look, I like Prize Picks for baseball too. The Red Sox just started up. They're playing the Mariners, the A's. I put a little money down and I got a lot more money back. So download the app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. I did the same. Again, download the app today. Use code CLNS at Prize Picks for a first deposit match up to $100, and you can do the same. Basketball, hockey, and baseball. We got a lot to do until the draft, and you can find it all at Prize Picks. But let's move on, because J.J. McCarthy is, he's the talk of the town the last 2 weeks. TV, radio, whatever it might be. It's the Tony Pauline stuff. Yeah. Michael Holley is throwing logs onto the fire, whether it's the Commanders at 2, who are going to host J.J. McCarthy, the Patriots, who are next week here as well on a top 30 visit. You watched every single rep. I watched every single rep on him as well. What was something that is kind of accepted in draft talk, but you found to not be true or close to true in your review?
For me, it's some of the player comps for J.J. McCarthy, because one of the popular ones, especially since the Vikings are looking to move up for a quarterback, obviously, is Kirk Cousins. I got a tweet reply today comparing J.J. McCarthy to Mac Jones, and I don't get it, because as part of this, I talked to a lot of scouts around the NFL, tried to get their opinions on Jayden Daniels and J.J. McCarthy. Like, unanimously, J.J. McCarthy's athleticism was viewed as one of his biggest strengths. Like, J.J. McCarthy is fast. Like, I know that, like, you might not expect that. You look at his rushing stats. He only ran for like 300 yards in each of the last 2 years, but like, the dude can move. He reportedly, according to the Detroit Free Press, ran a 4.48 when he was at Michigan. Those can be a little bit inflated, right? But even if you're talking about J.J. McCarthy being a 4.5 guy, that's significantly faster than Mac Jones, who could move better than Tom Brady, but that's about all that you could say about him. Like, J.J. McCarthy,
that's like iceberg floats faster than glacier. Like, that's all that says. And forget the numbers that are reported.
Yeah,
his 6.8 second 3-cone time would be top 10, top 15 among all defensive backs every single year at the combine. Like, that's an absurd time. He is a legit athlete, but continue.
Yeah, no, it's like a slot receiver time, essentially. And you see that as he's moving around the pocket too, because pocket presence is one of his biggest strengths. Throwing on the move, actually, I thought was his accuracy when throwing on the move was one of his biggest strengths as well. And like, you definitely would not say that about Mac Jones. Like, I forgot who we were talking to last year, but like, basically that like boot concepts weren't even thought about in New England just because of Mac Jones' playing style. Whereas if you had J.J. McCarthy at quarterback, you can install those. Like, that would be a strength of his game, because he can throw on the move. He's got accuracy in the move. He can maneuver the pocket. He's got good feet work in the pocket. Like, these are all things that I would not have necessarily said about Mac Jones. So like, that I just don't get at all. He's not just a pocket passer. I think that he probably will be primarily a pocket passer in the NFL based on his stature and some of the strengths of his game, but he can run an option. Like, he did that at Michigan. He can scramble out of the pocket. He did that quite a bit at Michigan. So I don't love J.J. McCarthy, the prospect. If Drake Maye's still there at number 3, I probably wouldn't be happy with J.J. McCarthy being the pick there. But there's a lot of strengths to his game. And we were talking about this earlier. Like, we talked about like athleticism. Probably be number 2 behind Jayden Daniels ahead of Drake Maye. Talk about accuracy. Like, he might be number 2 behind Jayden Daniels in front of Drake Maye. Talk about arm strength. He'd probably be number 2 behind Drake Maye in front of Jayden Daniels. So he's like second in all of the rankings. So you can't get that excited about one particular trait with him. But overall, he's a better prospect than the way that Michigan used him for most of his 2 years as a starter.
And I would add this, like, the athleticism part is one. The other one, he threw better over the middle of the field than I expected. Yeah. And I don't think the anticipation is there on all throws. And you see it more over the middle of the field, where he's a tick slow. He wants to see it first, then throw. And over the middle of the field, you just can't wait that long. But, that would be my myth to bust, but just staying on him here because – I think a lot of these quarterback evaluations, you realize how much we need to separate accuracy as like this large category, but what you're assessing really fit into smaller subcategories. And using J.J. McCarthy, for example, he's excellent on the move throwing. Like, he can rip it. It's a full body throw, but he gets it in there. Now, when he is throwing against tight coverage, completely falls off. a cliff. And I think you saw this in the last 3 games where Alabama, Ohio State, and Washington were the only 3 teams that walked onto the same field at Michigan last year and said, we're just as good as you, or at least we're in the neighborhood. Like, he had the benefit of, I'm going to have these big roomy pockets, good receiver, excellent offensive line. The structure of the defense has changed, the geometry of the field, because you're so focused on the run. I'll get my one-on-one single high coverage and kind of go to work. And granted, he was good in 3rd and longs, but his throws against tight windows are much worse than Jayden Daniels and Drake Maye. And you're going to throw into a lot of tight windows here in New England. And that's the part of accuracy that I think deserves to get highlighted. It's not everything, but the way you need to break that off, because he'll throw well or decent enough from an open pocket, but he had more time. The ball sails typically on longer sideline throws, the opposite of Jayden Daniels. And you don't just get that when you say, oh, well, his accuracy was X. Like, he's very good. Right. When you break it down, certain things, yes, others, no. And that makes a difference between quarterbacks you're talking about in the top 3 or top 5 and just generally in the first round.
Yeah, and he definitely also had more of a willingness to throw over the middle than Jayden Daniels did, at least.
Yeah.
One final note on J.J. McCarthy, although we'll probably get into him a little bit more later, is if the Patriots do take J.J. McCarthy, don't watch the Bowling Green game. Like, shockingly bad from J.J. McCarthy. Like, he did have lower lows last season than what I personally saw from Jayden Daniels and Drake Maye. Certainly Jayden Daniels, like, yeah, some of the early games were kind of rough, but like
the Drake Maye NC State game is atrocious.
Yeah.
And I Clemson was not good either, even accounting for, opposition. I talked about that last episode if you want to know why, but like the Bowling Green early in the season, that level of competition, you're right, was like, not as glaringly bad, but pretty much down there.
I was like, what is happening here? Because he started off the season pretty good against like some of the lower competition against East Carolina and UNLV, but like Bowling Green was rough. Maryland was kind of rough, but he definitely had a lot of high highs as well. So we'll see what happens there. But I don't know. It was interesting watching him also.
Jayden Daniels. Yes. Again, you watched every single rep. I did not. My takeaway, though, in the few games that I had watched is, and I've said this and I stand by it. I think he's got the prettiest deep ball in the entire class. And prettiest does not necessarily mean best projection, right? And I think that's so important to keep in mind. We're talking about quarterbacks or anything in the draft. This is a conversation not about the perfection of the prospect, but their projection moving forward. Drake Maye is not someone who's going to suck because his footwork right now is pretty sloppy. He's 21. Okay. He's had 2 seasons of college football. You can fix that. Jayden Daniels doesn't throw a whole lot over the middle. You can work with that. But what you cannot change is his arm strength now in his mid-20s, where it was very pretty. But as far as the laser drive throws, right? Like I need to get into a tight window. His arm strength did not match the raw power of his arm to what the ball looked like going to Malik Neighbors and Thomas downfield.
Yeah, I would say that, arm strength was not one of his best traits from what I saw.
Closer to adequate than exceptional. It's above average, but it's not in the way you would expect a quarterback with all these explosive plays and all these deep throws.
Yeah, I mean, I think what someone said to me was that he throws like a very catchable ball. And he does put good touch on the ball, but he just doesn't have the fastball that Drake Maye does. And I would even put his arm strength lower than J.J. McCarthy. The deep ball accuracy is great. Like that's something that obviously like it accounts for big plays. It's huge. Like that was the biggest thing that I noticed while watching Jayden Daniels was like the amount of perfect deep balls that he was throwing to Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas, especially. It was laughable almost. Like he had 42 touchdowns. I swear to God, like 20 of them were these like perfect lofted deep balls to these guys that he placed perfectly in the corner of the end zone, hit the guys in stride, gave them room to run if it wasn't in the end zone. But I do wonder a little bit, and maybe I'm just snake bitten after watching Mac Jones in 2021 coming out of college and then what he did in the NFL, is that like I do wonder how much some of that perfectly translates to the NFL when those windows are going to be a little bit tighter, when the defensive backs are just as fast as wide receivers, because out of these top 3 quarterbacks, Jayden Daniels definitely benefited the most from his wide receivers. Like Malik Neighbors to some people is the best wide receiver in this class. Brian Thomas looked at as a top 20 pick at wide receiver. No one else in this class had 2 top 20 picks at wide receiver. You could argue that maybe Michael Penix's supporting cast at wide receiver was better because he had 3 guys who were draftable rather than 2. But I don't know. I mean, like it was Mac Jones at Alabama when he was thrown to Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, and who was the third guy? John Mechie.
John Mechie, yeah.
That like, yeah, of course his deep balls are going to look fantastic. He's throwing to NFL wide receivers who are running past defensive backs. So I don't know, like the ball placement was great, but you do have to wonder how much that's going to translate. The one other thing I would say about Jayden Daniels is that there are definitely times when he looks like Lamar Jackson, when he's running down the middle of the field. He's got great running vision out there. He can weave around guys without getting contacted. At least on options and when he'd scramble out to the side, like there were times when he would have a little bit of trouble beating a linebacker or beating a safety to the edge, which made me question like just how fast Jayden Daniels is. Like he's definitely more athletic, definitely more of a playmaker with his feet than Drake Maye or J.J. McCarthy. But that's another thing where I'm like, all right, yeah, it was a huge strength of his game at LSU, but even SEC defenders aren't as big, strong, and fast as NFL defenders are. So if he can rip off a 260-yard runs against Florida, those might wind up being 15-yard runs in the NFL. And just like the value isn't quite, I don't know. It doesn't translate quite as well to what you're seeing on the field out there.
Yeah, and he, this is said everywhere, but is much more of a linear runner and athlete than you would say side to side. Like Lamar Jackson can devastate you, not just with his acceleration, but his deceleration. Coming to the sideline, you're still in movement. You're in the bench, and he's going, see ya, and goes up another 10 or 15 yards upfield. You're not getting that with Jayden Daniels.
No, he's
kind of, he doesn't downshift quite as easily or go side to side. I'll say another thing, too, because, we bring up the age component, and I think that, is something that's important to weigh, not as much as you might see in like the NBA where you're 21 and you're just old and knocked down like 10 pegs. But in the sense that this version of Jayden Daniels might be what you're getting moving forward. Yeah. The clay here is a little bit drier.
Right.
It's not as moldable moving forward because of all the time he spent in college. And he's certainly, you could argue the best quarterback right now.
Yeah.
But you're not drafting for 2024. You're drafting ideally for the next 10 years. And so I would say, and this is a harsh comp, but Derek Clausen of Reception Perception does an excellent job. All the quarterback breakdowns, give him a follow. Clausen was with a K. Gave this. I'm not saying he's hyped up or souped up Tyrod Taylor, but a guy who's exceptionally accurate, mobile, doesn't throw a ton over the middle of the field, and doesn't have super threatening arm talent. Like that might be where Jayden Daniels is also as an older prospect. I'm not there. Right. I would say lean and weigh and consider taking him at 3 if Drake Maye is gone. We'll get to that in a second. But it's something to be mindful of. The age is like, this is what you get if you're upping the level of competition, and he's going to improve a little bit, but largely stay in the same plane. That might be an issue.
Yeah, I mean, it's also like the frame is scary too. There's a lot of things that are scary about Jayden Daniels. And I don't want to come across as someone who dislikes Jayden Daniels, because overall I was impressed with him.
Yeah.
But I think that the way I'm talking about Jayden Daniels and J.J. McCarthy is through the lens of this entire draft season. Jayden Daniels has been a top 3 pick, and J.J. McCarthy's been a late first-round pick. And now, I'm kind of saying, all right, well, this is why this guy's moving up, and this is why this guy is kind of staying around the same area. The Tyrod Taylor thing is interesting because
it's so harsh, though.
It's really harsh.
I almost didn't want to bring it up, but I don't want to say big picture, but kind of the bones of that argument hold up.
Yeah, and I certainly think he's going to be better than Tyrod Taylor, but I found it interesting when he brought that up because in Julian Edelman's recent podcast with Ernie Adams specifically mentioned Tyrod Taylor when Julian Edelman was asking Ernie Adams, what were you looking for in quarterbacks when you go out on the field during the pregame and stand behind them and watch their every throw? And one thing that he was saying was just that the velocity that quarterbacks can put on the ball. And he specifically said that Tyrod Taylor was a guy who didn't have that fastball, that then the Patriots knew that they could just play zone against the whole time because they would have the time. Defensive backs would have the opportunity and the time to catch up and get in front of receivers and make plays on the ball because he didn't have that fastball that other quarterbacks did. And I think that I'd probably put Jayden Daniels' arm talent or arm strength above Tyrod Taylor, but that's one of the things that you're talking about when you're talking about pure velocity and arm strength, where Drake Maye, you're going to have to play man against because of his velocity, whereas Jayden Daniels, we'll see how the arm strength translates. We'll see if he can bulk up a little bit and improve that, but he might be a guy that teams, and you'd want to do this anyway with his running ability, play zone against maybe more than man.
And he did shred zone at LSU. That was not some sort of cure-all for the dude. He put unprecedented numbers up at LSU, won the Heisman Trophy. Neighbors factors in, Brian Thomas factors in. Excellent offensive line does as well. It's just a matter of, okay, what are the things you can isolate about him that then will carry over to the NFL? Because obviously all of those teammates are not going to go with him. Otherwise, he absolutely, unequivocally wouldn't just be the number 2 pick, but the number 1 pick given his surrounding talent. So again, I like him a lot. I think he's worthy of a top 5 pick. But when you look at, again, projection, what's the ceiling? How much can you carry? How much can you create? There are concerns around a player who's exceptionally accurate, has enough frame. The arm strength, again, is above average, closer to adequate than exceptional, but is good enough and has plenty of starting reps, which you worry about with the J.J. McCarthy and you don't with Jayden Daniels. Now, sticking with Daniels for a second, this is something that had been in the back of my mind and is now, I think, becoming a little bit more into the conversation of the draft ether, which is just a mess right now because it's silly season. Yeah. The idea, though, that this assumption, largely, that Jayden Daniels is going to go number 2, Adam Schefter doubled down on this in his podcast, is reminiscent of 3 years ago. Mac Jones is going number 3 to San Francisco. That's why the Niners traded up. It's Mac Jones, it's Mac Jones, it's Mac Jones. It came from Schefter. Yeah. It came from Ian Rappaport. It came from everybody. And I'm sitting there going, well, that doesn't make sense. The low trades prospect. Like, why are you mortgaging your future for that guy? Jayden Daniels just being assumed to Washington. Are you worried that's as much hot air this year? And why would it be and why wouldn't it be?
I'm not as worried. I actually think the J.J. McCarthy number 3 of the Patriots is like kind of reminiscent about that to me a little bit. I think with Jayden Daniels, it's like when I ask people around the league, like, how do you rank these guys? It's just a matter of personal preference when it comes down to it. So like, I would not be surprised if Jayden Daniels is number 2 overall, if that is like their own personal preference. I think that there's some people in the Patriots building who would have, or I know there's some people in the Patriots building who
we can be honest here,
who have Jayden Daniels as their number 2 quarterback. Who, like, if they're sitting there in the Commanders pick and Caleb Williams goes off the board first, they would take Jayden Daniels number 2 overall. So like, it's not this wild concept that Jayden Daniels would be the second quarterback.
Well, no, that's the assumption. Like, I think we get that. But as far as it being hot air, is that just the Commanders going, look, you can say whatever you want in the media. We're still going through our process. Because to me,
I don't know. I'm not convinced that anything's been, I don't know. I guess something could be decided at this point. Because like, they know.
You should know.
So I think it's probably been decided. I don't know. It's so tough to look at it. I would still probably expect Jayden Daniels to be the number 2 overall pick just based on what, Schefter is the most believable, like what he says usually happens.
But that's my point, though, is he was wrong about Mac. Yeah. And they all said it. And Adam Peters was in that Niners front office that year. He's now leading the Commanders front office. And so I don't know what the benefit would be of sending out a smokescreen then, as we talked about before and I wrote about last week. The benefit of the Niners throwing out a smokescreen for Mac Jones was they were in talks with the Patriots about trading Jimmy G. If they understood and knew that the Patriots like Mac Jones, and they did, they drafted him, but made it seem like all options for the Patriots be off the table by the time they picked the quarterback. Right. The Patriots would have to acquiesce then to their terms on a Jimmy G trade, which, according to Seth Wickersham, was revisited the day of the draft. And the Patriots said, we'll give you a second-round pick. And at that point, only at that point, on draft day, did the Mac Jones to San Francisco noise dissipate. Now, again, there's no benefit there of trying to squeeze a team to do the trade that you want to, as there was with the Jimmy G dynamic back in 2021. But it also is not the job of the Commanders to go out and say, hey, Adam, that's not true. Like, they don't care.
I mean, it's also a little bit different just being the number 2 overall pick versus the number 3 overall pick, because like with the Niners, not only was there the Jimmy G trade in consideration, but like if they just come out and been like, we love Trey Lance, someone could trade up to number 2 for Trey Lance. Like maybe the Jets wouldn't have been willing to do that since they seem to be all in on Zach Wilson. But like that dynamic still did exist. Whereas with the Commanders, like if they want Jayden Daniels, they can just sit there and take him. Like no one's trading up to number 1 overall for Jayden Daniels with the Bears. Where I don't know. So I'm not quite as hesitant about it. But I also think that like I don't know. There's a whole thing during the NFL annual meeting with Tom Pelissero saying that J.J. McCarthy could be the number 2 overall pick. And Michael Hawley said the same thing this week. So personally, I don't know though. Like, I don't think it's that crazy. I know that it seems wild to throw J.J. McCarthy into that mix at number 2 overall, but I think Drake Maye, and we'll get into this in a second, I'm sure, but like I think Drake Maye is the second best quarterback in this class, but like you can tear apart any argument with these guys' strengths. And I do think that J.J. McCarthy is probably the fourth best quarterback in this class. But like I said, like he's number 2 behind someone else and a lot of these different traits. It's not like he's 4 in everything. It's not like he's the worst quarterback in every single area behind Caleb Williams, Jayden Daniels, and Drake Maye. Like he stacks up in a lot of different areas and so in a lot of different ways. So like, I think it's all a matter of personal preference when it comes down to these 4 guys.
Okay, so the reason I brought up, are you worried about Jayden Daniels being a smokescreen at number 2? Or let's not say smokescreen. Right. Let's just say it's inaccurate and it doesn't happen.
Yes.
The Commanders take Drake Maye after they have traded one of his best friends, Sam Howell, to Seattle. And obviously have connections and visits and time with Drake Maye and might look at him as just being a better prospect. I certainly do. Than Jayden Daniels or J.J. McCarthy. You're at number 3. Well, first of all, would that be a major disappointment to you in the way that it would be to me? Because I just think Drake Maye, as far as his fit, the prototype of the position, it would be a real disappointment because I would be fine with the Patriots taking Jayden Daniels, but I would love them to take Drake Maye. If he's off the table, do you feel the same or how differently?
Like putting out like a Patriots fan hat on or something like that. I don't think I would be like devastated by it. I think he's got the most upside of those 3 guys. If you're talking about Drake Maye, Jayden Daniels, and J.J. McCarthy, just based purely on the arm talent and the fact that like he's not a statue. He's a very athletic quarterback when it comes down to it. He's got the best frame. Like the upside there is Josh Allen. Whereas if you talk about Jayden Daniels, like because you were talking about this earlier, like what's the ceiling? What's the upside? What's the best possible outcome for Jayden Daniels? I don't think you can say Lamar Jackson. So it would have to be like someone like a not a poor man's, but like a somewhat lesser, like wealthy man's Lamar Jackson, or like, I don't know. Someone was comparing him to Patrick Mahomes recently,
which is insane to me, which is an insane comp for anyone and unfair to that prospect. Yeah. And again, there's a difference between the high end comps that we're making and where are you right now as a prospect versus where you might be as a player. J.J. McCarthy, for example, goes to Minnesota, throws to T.J. Hawkinson, throws to Justin Jefferson, gets protected by a good offensive line, coached by Kevin O'Connell. He might look like the best player for the next 2 years. Again, not the point of the draft to win in 2024 and 2025. But that said, I think Jayden Daniels is closer to like an RG3 comp, and he was a little bit more side-to-side type of athlete. But I think the arm is closer there than it would be for Lamar.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. And J.J. McCarthy, I think your ceiling on J.J. McCarthy might be a tick higher than Jayden Daniels, but like the floor is the floor. Like because like based on what you saw last year, it wasn't quite as striking as what you saw of Jayden Daniels. So I wouldn't be devastated by it. I would still be willing to take one of those other quarterbacks at number 3 overall, and I'd be happy to turn in that card. I do think that Drake Maye, just based purely on the upside, but I will say that with a Drake Maye, I don't know. I mean, I guess the Commanders aren't any better set up for it anyway, but like, I think that you do want a proven quarterback developer in your building. So that would scare me a little bit with the Patriots with Drake Maye, just that like, you don't necessarily know how Alex Van Pelt, T.C. McCartney will develop a quarterback. Like Ben McAdoo, maybe like you could trust that, but he's not even in a quarterback position. Like,
well, I think the examples you would cite are just so long ago.
Right.
Like Rodgers was in there when they're taking off in Green Bay. Mike McCarthy had his hands really on Rodgers at that point, which you can knock Mike McCarthy for a lot. Basically, everything he's done since is a play caller and a head coach, but as a developer of quarterbacks, look no further than Aaron Rodgers. Josh Freeman was decent, at least in Tampa, and AVP was there. And then you're getting into various levels. Though you go to last season, he prepared 6 different starting quarterbacks, and the Browns go to the playoffs. Like I have enough faith in him, but I think it's a fair point to ask how much development can be done here. I just think from a technical standpoint, if he sits there, there's a lot there. Okay, so you're not worried. You'd be fine with either of the other quarterbacks. Drake Maye goes number 2. Patriots are looking at Jayden Daniels, J.J. McCarthy, and possibly a trade back. So here's my question now. And I think you just answered it. Is J.J. McCarthy worth a top 5 pick? Because I would argue no. I see that as an investment, a franchise-changing investment in value and chip that you need to cash in and get at least the potential of that reward. I look at J.J. McCarthy as one of two comps. And the first one is courtesy of Daniel Jeremiah. And it's funny because this player went number 1 overall. Both of them did, but did not pan out as number 1 overall picks. Alex Smith, who had the same 3-cone time, similar playing style, is a little bit more conservative than J.J. McCarthy, or Baker Mayfield, another exceptionally accurate, but played within a lot of space, a lot of roomy pockets, and then has to throw with his entire 6'1", 6'2" body to get these off-platform throws. And obviously neither of them panned out as franchise guys for the next 10 years. So my answer is no, which then leaves me going, Jayden Daniels or a trade back. And I'm leaning Jayden Daniels. I think that's where I'm going to land. I think you take the quarterback. But I can't include J.J. McCarthy unless it's a trade back and then somehow you get him, which doesn't seem possible right now.
I'd take Jayden Daniels at number 3. I don't think I would like kill anyone for taking J.J. McCarthy in the top 5. And like I think that there would be some disappointment there if it was McCarthy over Daniels at number 3 overall. But I've warmed up to the idea, and maybe it is just like the off-platform throws, the footwork. Like there's just enough there where like, because for a while I was like, oh, it's just like a Christian Ponder situation, or like but I do think that he's a good athlete. I'm not sure how much of a strength that'll be in his game in the NFL level, because he's playing around 200 pounds. I don't think you want him running around a lot out there.
Well, and that's a great point, because he's an inch shorter than Jayden Daniels.
Right.
But he weighs just under 210.
He did at Michigan. He was 202. He was listed at 202 in Michigan. He weighed in, I think, at 215 or 218 at his pro day. So he had increased his weight, but like a lot of it's probably
had sand in his pockets.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, at the same time, like Jayden Daniels weighed in at 210 at his pro day.
Right.
So a lot of that's probably like they're chugging water and eating spaghetti the night before too, to just like to get that weight up. So I don't know, like the frame of both players concerns me. I don't know. It's so I would take Jayden Daniels number 3 overall. I wouldn't despise the pick if it's J.J. McCarthy. Would
you make it though if it was you?
I would take Jayden Daniels before J.J. McCarthy.
Okay, so let's say for whatever reason, Jayden Daniels is up. He has a Laramie Tunsil video, but much worse, that comes out before the draft, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, I can't take this guy." So your options are then down to, again, is J.J. McCarthy with the top 5 pick? I say no. I just don't think the upside is there. His ability when the competition is closer to even, how he performed, which really gets to this question, and I'm going to let you answer my question in a second, but I want to get this point off before I forget it. How much did he drive the winning at Michigan? This is not to say
for sure.
It's your fault. You had great teammates. It's to ask, when he is this winner, high school, IMG at prep school, college, how much were you responsible for that? He was an excellent high school recruit. The profile is solid to good enough. But how much are you going to cause winning, elevate your teammates, and create with your own skill set? And I look at him and just say, just like Alex Smith and really Baker Mayfield, he doesn't do enough of that to warrant the number 3 overall pick. So,
well, yeah, I mean, Michigan ran the ball more than they passed last year,
yeah,
which is damning in itself. At the same time, the argument that I make on that is that like the formula worked. So there was really no reason to like stray from that formula. They won a national championship running the ball more than passing, but you would have liked J.J. McCarthy to be more involved in the offense. They did rely on him in like gotta have it critical situations like 3rd downs and 4th downs and stuff like that. If there's a Laramie Tunsil, I'd take him. I think he's better. You're better off coming out of the draft with J.J. McCarthy than you are with Bo Nix or Michael Penix or Spencer Rattler or any of those guys. And I don't think there's a guarantee that you can trade down from number 3 overall and still get J.J. McCarthy, because there are other quarterback needy teams that are then in competition for him. So
you're making me the bad guy.
Yes, I am. And like me, I might wind up coming across crazy. Like maybe J.J. McCarthy absolutely sucks, or maybe J.J. McCarthy's like a 2nd round pick. And it's like, remember 2022 draft when like everyone was expecting Malik Willis to be a 1st round pick,
or Will Levis last year.
Yeah, last year, Will Levis, or like that 2022 class with like people were expecting, what's his name, the Falcons quarterback,
Desmond Ridder. Tony Pauline saying most teams have a 1st round grade, and then he goes in the 3rd.
Yeah, and like all those guys, Sam Howell, all those guys that weren't expected 1st round picks, and then it only wound up being Kenny Pickett. So who knows? It's crazy season. It's silly season. Maybe all of this has been a huge smokescreen with J.J. McCarthy, but I expect him to be coming off the board early in the 1st round.
Yeah, I do too, and that's what makes this difficult, because if it comes down to the options in 3, and here we'll rank them now, right now for you. Mine are Drake Maye. Then once you get down, Jayden Daniels, and then I want to trade back. If I have to make a pick at 3, it's not going to be J.J. McCarthy for me. Again, doesn't drive winning enough. I think he's a fine quarterback prospect. If he lands in a great situation, like I outlined with Minnesota, he could succeed right away. I think it will be analogous, though, or close to Mac Jones here in New England. A guy you can win with maybe the first couple of years, but is not going to drive winning or elevate you in a way consistently, because he just doesn't have the skill set or the traits. Again, there's nothing to wow you there. The upside of his film at Michigan was a couple like nice flash plays, but you're not doing that consistently in a way that I saw from Drake Maye and from Jayden Daniels. So those are my 2 guys. And it's crazy to me that I've been saying all offseason, the only place on planet Earth you can finish this at home to find a quarterback reliably is in the top 10 of the draft. And I'm going trade back if you don't get one of these guys. But luckily, they will have the option between the 2 of Jayden Daniels and Drake Maye. It just doesn't mean, though, that they agree. So what would your options be? I just went Drake Maye, Jayden Daniels, trade back, then J.J. McCarthy would be my preference. Yours or what?
Yeah, I think like I would rank them Caleb Williams, Drake Maye, Jayden Daniels, J.J. McCarthy. And I just, they need a quarterback. And like, I don't think there's even necessarily going to be a J.J. McCarthy type. There's no guarantee that there's a J.J. McCarthy type available to them next year in the draft, or that they'll be in position to select that guy. I don't know if you watched closely enough to have a specific J.J. McCarthy play that stands out, but the one that stands out to me, did you pay close attention to like the errant flea flicker? That
like when he's falling back against Alabama in the Rose Bowl,
he tosses it out to the running back.
Didn't watch closely enough. Try me again.
Throws backwards to J.J. McCarthy, but it's like the worst throw of all time. Where J.J. McCarthy has to like jump to
catch the double
it.
Pass.
Yeah. It's not necessarily a flea flicker. It's more of a double pass than a flea flicker. But then he like jumps to catch the ball, is falling back, and like throws like kind of a dart to a wide open wide receiver, but still like whether it might have actually been the tight end, it might have been number 18 that he was throwing to. I forgot exactly who it was, but I was like, that was the one where I was like, holy crap, that was a wild play that somehow J.J. McCarthy had the wherewithal to pull off. But no, and like there was definitely way more wow throws by Jayden Daniels on the deep throws and with the runs, and just by Drake Maye on account of his arm strength than there was for J.J. McCarthy. But I don't know. Well, I'm very like hesitantly stumping for J.J. McCarthy.
That's the trouble with his tape, I think, more than most. Like the Drake Maye sell, as I again made it last week, is straightforward. He looks like plays like guys that you've seen. Give him a little bit of training, some time, some oil in there, and loosen him up and get it right. And there he goes. Right. Jayden Daniels, look at the resume, look at the statistics, look at the deep ball. Sold. J.J. McCarthy is, you've got to look at the top end plays. Right. And then acknowledge there's not a whole lot more underneath because of the limited sample, quality of competition. And again, when they did play good competition, his tight window throws, the NFL drive throws weren't necessarily there from a bigger pocket, especially when he was not throwing in 2.8 seconds or more, which was his average. But you can make it. You just have to be more selective. I just can't get there. I mean, he had some great layered throws against Ohio State. There was a rollout left touchdown pass against, I want to say, Indiana or Maryland. And they're there. You just have to be more selective, and you feel like you're being selective now. Okay, so we ranked all of our options. The J.J. McCarthy debate will go on. I did 2 consecutive TV hits 9 days apart doing this, and here we are doing it on the podcast. Let's end on this. It is April 11th, 2 weeks away from the draft. Your best guess at what happens, given obviously Caleb Williams, number 1 to Chicago, whatever happens with Washington, and then the Patriots at 3 is what?
Drake Maye. I think that's what I'd be leaning towards, is that Jayden Daniels still goes number 2 overall, and then they take Drake Maye at number 3 overall. I mean, we know that he impressed them during the combine interviews. Gerard Mayo talked about his ceiling. Obviously, there's probably a lower floor with Drake Maye than someone like Jayden Daniels.
Daniels would be an unbelievable prospect.
That'd be the best.
Throw 4 or 5 wheels on that dude and keep everything else. Amen.
J.J. McCarthy, a poor man's Drake Daniels. But yeah, I think I would go Drake Maye, which obviously would make you very happy. I think it would be really fun to watch Drake Maye throughout training camp and rookie mini camp, the preseason, all that stuff. I also think that they'd be best off sitting, whether it's Drake Maye or J.J. McCarthy for an entire season.
Yeah.
Because I think that you need to, or maybe even if it's not a whole season, I would still play Jacoby Brissett for probably the first month of the season.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Ultimately, because I want to see the offensive line settle before a rookie quarterback goes out there. And like, I think you want to put the offensive line out there for, the first month of the season. First of all, see how they look in general. If they're awful, then obviously it makes sense not to put a rookie out there. But if they improve, maybe you get to the point where you put a rookie quarterback out there. But if they come out even looking good, I still think you want to give it a month to let it settle and see that they can maintain that style of play before you put a rookie out there.
Yeah, I agree. And we actually touched on the offensive line, the upcoming mail fan segment, and talk about really how at a loss they were to start last year. Yeah. You think about Antonio Mafi's out there, Calvin Anderson, Mike Onwenu, Cole Strange was out for that game, but that they just didn't even have any time to get settled and go. Yeah. And not to mention changing positions as they went against the Eagles and all these defensive lines that obviously wrecked them over a 1-3 start that became, I think, 1-6 for the Patriots. But anyway, looking ahead to 2024, 2 weeks away from the draft. Thank you for coming on the pod once again. We will have more segments next week. If you want to join the show, as we just had our guy here coming up to talk for 10 minutes, 12 minutes, donate to Boston Children's Hospital, drop me a mailbag question, and come out to Pats and Pints next week, 1 week away from tonight, 7 to 10 in South Weymouth at Vitamin C Brewery. Tickets are $20. You can find them on my Twitter, Fitzy's Twitter. Doug will be there. We'll have plenty of other Patriots experts. Just come hang out. Have a beer, and then ask a question or razz us or do whatever you want. But donate to Boston Children's where all the money from that night is going. Send us a mailbag question, come on the show, and then come out Thursday, April 18th, 7 to 10, Vitamin C, SEA Brewing for Pats and Pints. It's going to be a lot of fun. See ya. All right, wrapping up as we do every week with a mail fan segment. This time we are back on the Beast Coast. A couple guys from California coming on. Carlos. We had Gary last week offering up very kindly his vacation homes in Bridgeton and Denmark, Maine. For now, we have Kevin Bassett coming in from Brentham. Kevin has one-upped you all. I will just tell you this in the front end. Everyone who's been on the show has donated money to Boston Children's Hospital. Kevin Bassett is running the Boston Marathon. Small round of applause, at least here on this end, for you donating, raising money. Thank you for being on. Thank you for raising the money and donating in the first place. How's it feel to make your pod debut?
It feels awesome. I'm excited to be here, and thanks for the shout out for Boston Children's, and certainly appreciate all the work you do and all the donations that everybody's made. So much appreciated, and we're excited to get rolling.
Definitely. Fun fact I just found out about you. You have walked to games.
Yes, I have.
Stadium,
very close proximity to the stadium, just a couple miles away. So I have walked to games. I have walked home from games, and it's always a good time.
So being the, not so excellent journalist I am, I didn't ask a follow-up question, but I'll do so now. Can you tell us about the best walk back and the worst walk back you've had from Patriots games?
So the worst walk back, I'll say I didn't make it all the way back home. So it was it the Cleveland game? Was it 2 years ago? Or maybe it might have been Mac's rookie year, right? It was when he kind of threw the dart.
Yeah, 45-7.
So 45-7. So felt great coming out other than the weather, but got about halfway home and we said enough's enough of this and called the wife shuttle for a ride home. So other than that, the good ones are usually the September, early October games where you just have a beautiful day and you get to walk home, especially after a win.
Are you walking with a beer? Do you have water? Like what's that walk like? Is it slow? Is it quick?
Are those records sealed? Usually there's something going on there. Sometimes that's a good reason to walk home. But there's usually some consumption there.
Well, good. Compared to me, a guy who sits alone, talks to himself, and has a beer publicly on this podcast, you walking with a beer after a football game, you're going to look just fine. So don't worry about that.
You don't look out of place till you get to Rentham Center, and then it's kind of, what's this random guy doing with a beer in his hand? But you're in full Patriots gear and a jersey, so people kind of know.
For sure. All right, let's get to it. You had a topic you wanted to broach here, and it was basically talking about the ceiling of the Patriots. And I think this obviously is tied a lot to the draft. They have high draft picks. The kids are going to play a lot. If you hit on these draft picks, the ceiling goes up. It's as simple as that. If you don't, the ceiling goes down. They're currently projected for a win total, an over and under, I should say, 4.5 in some places, 5.5 in others. You seem to believe that should be higher, almost regardless of the draft class here. So make the pitch.
All right, here we go. So we had 4 wins last year, right? I think the big argument to this is your team did not get worse right? So if we look at what they've done in the offseason, what they'll continue to do, number of things. I'm going to start on defense, right? Defense, I think we can all agree, pretty damn good last year. Really, really no major holes. And when we look at that, that's really, we had 4 games of Christian Gonzalez, right? So his first 4 games as a rookie, we all came out of those 4 games going, wow, this guy's a stud. And then we lost him and still somehow kept the secondary together. We lost Marcus Jones after 5 games. And then the biggest one, we lost Matt Judon, right? So arguably, maybe at least 2, if not 3 of our better players on defense, and the defense held it together, right? We lost games 6-0 last year, right? So let's hope that doesn't happen again. So in theory, defense gets all those guys back, keeps getting better. I don't think we had any regrettable losses on defense. I know we might have lost some snaps with Miles Bryant, but I think, you replace a lot of those with capable talent. And then what's coming in are all the guys you lost plus new rookies. And I think some of the other things you look at, right? Keion White, I think he's a beast. He was a rookie last year, right? Went through, I'm not even going to say rookie struggles. He really wasn't a bad player last year. And he had flashes where you just go, wow, this guy's a monster. He's big, he's powerful, he's strong. I think second year, lot to come on with him. I think he's going to get a lot better. And I think you've really got a solidified defensive front there. Same with Marte Mapu, who, guilty as charged. I forget all the time that guy's on the team. I think athletic ceiling is totally there. So he, I think, is one where you looked at a little bit more, where had a little bit of rookie struggles, kind of came from a smaller program, but coming into a full year in the NFL, you saw him start to piece things together late in the year. So really don't know what they're going to do with him, where he's going to fit, but you bring back all the other pieces that we have, right? We saw the Duggar extension. We know Peppers is coming back, the linebackers. We bring in a new linebacker and Taki. Long story short, the defense did not get worse, and I think the argument can be made the defense got better. The offense.
Let me stop you there, because I think there are a lot of salient points there, and the injury part is the biggest piece, right? You lost arguably your 2 best players, even though Christian Gonzalez, I've said many times, didn't even get through game 4. Yeah. But we all saw it. People believe in the small sample. I believe he's going to get there, but I just want to see a little bit more. Where do you see guys improving, like making a jump that would even offset some injury losses? Because injuries are going to happen, right? Like not everyone's going to be healthy next season. Are you more optimistic about certain players on defense than maybe consensus?
I think maybe Mapu being the one, and probably Keion White that I highlighted. And White was a guy that, you saw early in the year. Again, another one people just kind of forgot about. But once he got out there, once he started making some plays, you could really see the potential there. So I think early in the year, he had a little bit more limited snap count. I could see him becoming much more of a deeper rotation player, right? More across from Judon. I think with Uche coming in, you've got a speed tandem there with Uche if he's in there, and then you bring in, I think, power, and he's really got a little bit of speed too. So I think I'm probably higher on him than maybe some other people are. I don't think there's any reason to be low on him, but I think he's one that you could really have a big second year leap on, because he showed you, I don't think he showed you anything negative last year, and he showed just a ton of potential. He just needs to get out there a little bit more, but the amount of power that guy has, I mean, geez, I've met him. I would be scared shitless to be around that guy to tackle me, right? It's just like, he's just a beast, I think. And I think he's got all the potential in the world.
Yeah, he's a scary dude. And that's even in the locker room. He's a guy I can tell you on the headphones a lot by himself. It's not a bad thing. I think you'd always love to hear stories about guys connecting with everyone else in the locker room, listening to music, joking around. That's not him. That's fine. You can be a great snarling football player who keeps to himself so long as you show up on Sundays. Yeah. And I even said this, last night to Tom Curran, being, he had left, Tom had on this graphic we had on TV of their potential edge guys. And I'm going, where's Keion White? I was like, you can tell Keion you left him off, because I'm not going to.
So funny story. So when I met him was exactly that. He was somewhere out in public by himself. It was right after he got drafted, and I followed the draft pretty close. And I'm looking at him and like, I know who that is. Not everybody here does. So I want to go say hi to him, and it was like tiptoeing up to the guy, like a child. Like, are you Keion White? But he couldn't have been a nicer guy. I'll put that out there. I mean, almost like gentle giant. Almost had a great conversation with him, and just a really, really nice guy. But do not want to get tackled by him.
No, definitely. And he came on at the end of last year. Like, I think he built out his pass rush repertoire, which we saw. He's got a strong bull rush. He's got a great inside move, and flashed that in the preseason. But then that also did him a disservice early in the year where teams were like, oh, okay, we know you have these two. We'll prepare for both. And then he's looking going, I don't really have a plan B, which happens to a lot of rookies. But he
I think the unsung thing there, right, is you go, right, we've still got Dietrich Wise. So a lot of the year you had Dietrich, you had Uche or whoever else is going to be on the other end, but you didn't have Judon. So now all of a sudden you've got, Judon in reality is almost an immediate double team, or he should be, right? So you had guys last year that maybe couldn't beat a lot of those things, and that maybe that's why we saw Uche's numbers fall off a little bit. But we get Judon back, and those guys end up being in one-on-ones with maybe tackle 2, and all of a sudden, they're getting a lot more gas, and there's a lot to work with there.
Yeah. All right. I will say, just to set proper expectations, looking at Judon 31 coming off of a serious torn bicep, but he's healthy now. I think teams will make him prove it more than just we're going to double you from the get-go. I think early on in the season, there'll be a feeling out period, which is fair. All right, let's go to the offense. I'm going to take off all of the obvious reasons that we've talked about here. There's going to be Jacoby Brissett, at least stable, respectable quarterback play. KJ Osborne, upgrade over Devontae Parker. I personally think Austin Hooper is an upgrade over Mike Gesicki. This isn't to say it's an appreciable upgrade or you'll see it in the stat sheet. It's just that guy can block a little bit better than the worst blocking tight end in the entire league. And Mike's a great guy. Knew him back in college, but there's an upgrade there. The offensive line, we'll see. Still need a left tackle. Kendrick Bourne will be back tomorrow. Douglas, year 2 leap. So aside from all of those reasons, is there anything that I missed on offense that has you just more optimistic? I didn't even talk about the coaching staff, so feel free to go there if you want to.
The offensive line got better at the end of the year. I'm not going to say it was good or great, but they did get better. And what we started to see was a little bit more continuity. So we had injuries with Strange. So Strange missed a little bit, but you started to see everything other than left tackle. We know that's a big problem. Started to gain a little bit of steam. You had rookies in there, between right guard, you were kind of bouncing between City So and a handful of other people. Once we kind of landed there with City So, you've got right tackle short up. We know, barring injuries, we've got center, and in theory, we've got left guard. Those are 4, in my mind, capable players. And City was a rookie last year. It's very hard to play offensive line as a rookie in the NFL. I don't care where he came from. So I think you start to get a little bit more continuity. And then left tackle, that's going to be a draft one. There's kind of the same handful of players in and out of there that for the last 2 years we've said, oh, maybe Calvin Anderson can get it together. Maybe Madarian Lowe or Tyrone Wheatley is going to get it together and they're going to figure it out. I don't have a whole lot of hope there. I think that's when you got to ace in the draft. But the reality being, we got a little bit better last year. I don't think the effort that we were getting out of the left tackle last year, whichever one was in there, was really where it needed to be. So, again, not worse, but we got to ace that left tackle draft pick. Where I'm a little higher, too, is the receivers. And stop me if you've heard this before with the Patriots, but we got a bunch of number 2, number 3 receivers again. Same story. But I think they're maybe a little bit more capable as before. I'll say if, right? We don't know where Kendrick Bourne is injury-wise, but he says he's going to be good to go. Let's hope. I think his ceiling is maybe a little higher than we think it's going to be because he can play multiple positions. We've got KJ Osborne, again, a very capable player. And I think Demario Douglas is going to be a matchup nightmare. Don't know exactly where he's going to play. I think we'll assume in the slot, but there's a type of guy who knows how to get open. And again, was a rookie last year. He's got a year in the league. He's definitely working on it. And he's definitely shown flashes where you can see defenses scratching their heads a little bit going, what do we do with this guy? So another year under his belt, I think that's an area where I don't think he's, his skill set lends itself to being a bona fide number 1. No, but I think it's a little bit of a matchup challenge in that, do you take your better corners or do you take a little bit more activity on him that maybe frees up some of the other guys? We'll see what happens with Juju. We'll see what happens with Taekwon. But I do think that group's a little more capable. And then where we go with the draft, I think the one thing that I'm excited about this draft is I do think we're going to get probably a quarterback, a receiver, and a tackle because we know this, whether we like it or not, they're going to go flashy in my mind, right? Because they're going to go different, right? We've made a big change. We've said we're going to go away from the Belichick way. If we go away from the Belichick way and come out with a Belichick draft, I think everybody's going to be pissed, right? So I think there's going to be flash. I think there's going to be a high receiver up there, and I think maybe there's some potential there. The other things, though, so one more piece to touch on, your tight ends are very capable. Your run game is very capable. So if you can lean on those, which I think Alex Van Pelt's offense does a little bit, you're working with something. So you come together, defense, still really good. Offense, same, maybe a little bit better. And then the last one I'll highlight, special teams. We're not going to have a rookie kicker again, right? We lose Matt Slater, not happy about that. But let's hope we either have a kicker who doesn't have rookie struggles or maybe a different kicker. And let's be honest, if we had 2 or 3 field goals in a couple of games this year, we come out on top. So all those things, I think maybe the ceiling's a little bit higher. I don't think it necessarily makes them a playoff team, but I think it's one of those things where it's probably a little bit higher than 4.5 games. I'm going to give them that.
Not to mention the schedule, right? That's a big part of this, is that you're just not facing the most difficult schedule in the league. It's going to be a last place schedule, and there are not many soft spots, particularly when you're projected to be the worst team in the AFC. And I think that's fair. But some of the points there are certainly salient. And I want to highlight, their starting guards going into week 1 last year, Michael Wynn and Cole Strange, both virtually missed all of training camp. So there's not only just a continuity at the end of the season, but they were coming from behind. And then Michael Wynn switches positions and obviously takes off. And so whether it's a year 2 leap for guys like City Sal or Antonio Mafi, or getting, players like Cole Strange back healthy, it's all of that coming together. And again, injuries are going to happen. Bad luck is going to happen. Just games where they get blown out because you just don't have the talent the second you step on the field. But I think this is a fine case. All right, Kevin Bassett, thank you very much for being our mail fan. Thank you for running the Boston Marathon. Best of luck. You're first for Boston Children's Hospital. Which I will say again, if you want to be on this show, you want to be like Kevin, you want to be like Carlos, you want to be like Gary, you want to be like Jordan, plenty of folks that we've had here on the show already. Donate to Boston Children's, just one. You don't have to run 26.2 miles. Screenshot it for me, ask me a question, and you will be here on the show. Thank you very much, sir.
Many thanks. And thank you, everybody, for the donations. Much appreciated.